This is an instructional movie on how to grow oyster mushrooms. You can use the same methodology in order to grow different kinds of oyster mushrooms. What you'll need to adapt is just the conditions, because there are oyster mushrooms that prefer lower temps, some other ones are preferring medium temps. So other than that, this is the methodology that you have to use. Of course, it has variations. You can adapt it as you want. You can even try to do experiments, and then you can settle this methodology. I mean, your methodology, because every grower has its own. And here are some things that you'll use. Just be creative, use your own creative spirit in order to improvise and to use whatever you feel like you want to use. In this case, I'm using a very simple recipe, and that's just aspen wood shavings. And I'm not using any gypsum or any other amendments, just because let's say gypsum, for example, I'm not using, because this is a substrate with porosity already. Wood shavings already create that porosity in the substrate, so you don't need to add gypsum to it. But if you would use, let's say, hardwood sawdust, then you would need to use some gypsum, so you can have some air exchange in there and it's not just a compact mass of substrate. You can try different recipes, but I would encourage you to start with a very simple one. If you want to measure the yield, for example, then you'll have to weight every ingredient apart, and then you can mix them up, and you can see what the yield is going to be. Here I'm using 3 kinds of containers. I'm doing a little experiment. I want to see what kind of yield will I get from each one of these containers, also the cap size, and which one is going to colonize faster. Now I'm pasteurizing this in a very simple way. I'm just adding hot water to it, and I'm keeping the substrate in for about 2 hours. But there are some other kind of disinfection methods. You can use ash, hydrated lime, or soap. So what you see here is just the fact that the substrate has been disinfected and it was drained and cooled down, and now I'm ready to inoculate that substrate. For that, of course, I'm going to use gloves. I want to manipulate the spawn in a very clean way, the cleanest as possible. You don't want to put your dirty hands on the spawn and inoculate that, so you have to be mindful and clean about the whole procedure. All the tools that you're going to use, make sure that you're going to spray them well. First, what you need to do is to check the spawn for competitor organisms. You don't want to inoculate that substrate with a spawn which is not fresh, which is old, or which is infected with competitor organisms like bacteria or molds. Make sure that it doesn't have any green spots, pink spots, or yellow spots in there, or black spots. Those are signs of mold infections. And what else you want to do in this case? You have to make sure that you're going to activate the spawn. What means is that you have to take it out of the fridge, with 24 hours up to 48 hours prior to inoculation. You're going to start to wake up and it's going to start to consume the nutritious grain in the jar. But in this case, we already activated the spawn, and this means that it's ready to be inoculated in the substrate. So it's going to have a continuous growth right away. The next day you'll already see that there's something going on. If you're going to keep that in the fridge, then you're not going to see that. You're going to see that the mycelium starts to colonize the substrate after like 2 days. So you don't want that. You want a fast colonization of the substrate, so you do that way. Also, make sure that you're going to shake well that spawn jar, because you don't want a mass of grain to sit in there somewhere placed in the substrate bag, but you want it all the way spread out in the substrate mass. So that's why you need to shake well the grain jar before, and also when you're going to place it in the bag in the substrate. So what you'll need to do once you fill these bags up, you need to disperse the spawn in the mass of the substrate. So you need to shake that bag, and you need to make sure that it gets everywhere. So that's a mix-through spawning method, which I'm doing it inside the substrate bag. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is to poke holes, and those holes are necessary because spawn, this fungus, it's a living organism, so it needs air, oxygen to breathe, and it releases CO2, so that needs to be that needs to have where to go. So for that reason I'm poking these holes. I'm just using some little sharp pins in order to do that. A good habit would be to spray the head of the pinheads before you would poke holes. And I'm poking holes also in the bottom of the bag, and that's very necessary just in case that there will be any leftover water that is going to accumulate at the bottom of the bag. So I don't want that, and for that I'm poking those holes to drain it. And lastly, of course, I'm going to write the species Latin name, or you can do the common name if you want, and the strain that I'm using, and also the date when this bag was inoculated. incubation chamber could be anything. What's more important about it is for it to have a constant temperature. Constant temperature, because that's going to otherwise it's going to take longer for those bags to get colonized. So, and what you see here, it's after 4 days from inoculation. This is how the bags look like. And after 4 days, what I would suggest you is to shake those bags. Why? Because you want to spread the spawn. You want to spread the little mycelial fragments that started to spread from the grain kernels. You want to spread it in the substrate mass, and they will function as little inoculation points all over. So that's going to give a boost to the whole colonization. Why is colonization of your bag important? Because that's going to decrease the chance for mold to form in the bag, for example. The sooner your bags are colonized, the better. So that's how you have to look at it. So make sure that you're going to shake them well, and then you can place them back in the incubation chamber. Okay, so this is how the bags are looking after 2 weeks from the from the inoculation. And as you may see, the mycelium spread all across the bag, and it started to get the bags started to get kind of white, but not all of the bags will be show the same colonization rate and degree. Some of them will be less, some of them will be more. For example, in one of these bags, as you see, there was more moisture than in the other ones, and in this case the strain couldn't really colonize well. And this doesn't mean that it's a bad bag. That probably is going to fruit also, but it might take a little bit longer. So we'll see more exactly. My little substrate containers are about ready to fruit, and because of that I'm already I decided to poke holes, and as you see in these little containers there are already pinheads or kind of clusters that give me the sign that the container is ready to fruit. So I'm just poking holes. In order to poke holes or to cut the surface and to make some exposure to air, you need to disinfect your tool first, and then you can do it. And in this case here I'm doing the same after 18 days after inoculating these bags. So I left another 2 days these bags up. Next, I'm going to place them into the fruiting chamber, which is also an experimental chamber that I have. I'm not growing mushrooms in a mass to make mass production. I'm just doing experimental growing, and for that I don't need huge containers or a huge grow rooms. So this is the first container that that fruited, and as expected, actually the little containers fruited first. It was lower amount of substrate, and the next container, of course, I'm expecting to be those almond milk containers. And finally, I would expect the plastic containers to plastic bag containers to fruit. So the fruiting conditions are somewhere, they need to be somewhere between the pinning conditions, let's say, to stimulate the pinheads to form. I would use somewhere between 90 and 100% humidity. I would pump in that little grow room, which is a fish tank, it doesn't matter. 5 to 10 rounds of fresh air per 24 hours, and of course for pinning you need a little bit lower temperature. So it's a beautiful morning here in Nevada, and I wanted to show you what I have here. So this oyster mushroom, it's a yellow oyster mushroom, and I have here pretty much 3 stages of development of this fungus. So here you can see that these are just primordia that just popped yesterday, and they started to develop very little pinheads here, and that would be the first stage. The color, it's pretty much somewhere between dirty white, grayish, somewhere yellowish, especially when you see just the thing forming up. It's more like a cluster, you don't really see individual pinheads in there. Then you can see that dirty white, grayish towards yellowish color, so it's a mix. So that's the first stage. This is the second stage right here. Now this turns into individual fruit bodies, and they start to develop a little bit more for you to see them really well right there. And if this took like 2 days, this is the 3rd day for this particular stage of development, and I would say that this also is pretty much the same size. And what you see here, this is already mature fruit bodies. I would say that I can leave them until tonight, or if I'm considering even tomorrow in the morning I could pick them up, but I guess I'll just harvest them tonight. So the second thing that I want to discuss here is that you know, as you see here, we have 3 types of containers of different size, and different shapes also. This doesn't mean that they will fruit in the same time, but this also doesn't mean that the smaller container is going to make fruit bodies first and then this other container, which is intermediary in between the bigger ones and a smaller one. So it's not necessarily the size of the container, even though if you think about the logics of it, this one here, it's getting colonized first, fully colonized, and this is ready to fruit after, let's say, 2 weeks. This takes a little bit longer. So see, now depends very much on some other factor, and that's also the amount of the spawn that you're going to add in the containers, and also how you're going to mix that spawn in, and how's that going to promote faster colonization. So depends on some things, and also on the strain. Another thing that I want to tell you is that, as you may see these containers here, this particularly so this is just filled up with substrate, inoculated substrate, but you don't really see anything what's going on inside. That's the disadvantage of it, because if there will be some kind of mold inside, you won't be able to see it, and this what's happening when you're going to use dark color containers. So make sure that you're going to use always transparent, so you can see any mold attacks or anything like that. Beautiful fruit bodies this morning, and I'm really glad to see them. It's like sunshine. Feels like it's a holiday or something. So as you may see, not every bag did fruit in the same time. This doesn't mean that it's not going to fruit a little bit later. For example, this one here, it didn't fruit yet, but what I see is that there are some fruit bodies right here inside the bag, popping here and there sporadically. So normally you would see fruit bodies right here in the middle because they have exposure to air, but for some reason this takes a little bit longer for this one to fruit. And this happens usually if you're going to put up like 50 bags at a time, one time, you will experience that some of them will fruit first, and then you will see that some other ones, they won't fruit, or some will get infected with molds, or something is going to happen. But if you're going to lose, let's say, from 50 bags, 2 bags to molds, that's fine, and that's normal. If you're going to lose to molds more than 2 bags, then there might be some kind of procedural issue, if you will, or some kind of hygiene related issue, or who knows what else. Now this, for example, these 2 bags, I could leave them for another day, because the fruit bodies, they didn't get at their maximum climax, let's say it that way. If I'm going to leave these for another day, the fruit bodies will get bigger and larger, and that means also that they will pull out some more nutrients and water from the back. But if I'm going to collect them now, this means that I'm going to leave those nutrients for the next flush. So in regards to water content, I'm going to rehydrate the bags and before the next flush, and that's going to provide more water to the second flush. So this, for example, here, now this is fully mature. I can't leave them for another day, for example, because they might fall into a kind of low quality fruit bodies, and I wouldn't really like to eat something which is not that nutritious anymore. So the younger the fruit bodies, the more content and nutrients you'll see in there. So this is the maximum that I can leave this fruit body. So when you'll see something like that, then you will know that these are ready to harvest. Okay, so I'm just going to harvest them. And what you do, just twist, and then you just put them there. Simple. Twist. There you go. So what you see here is just little remnants. Don't leave those there, because what's going to happen is they're going to get moldy, and it's better if you just take them out just like that. It will just get moldy, you know. They will soak in water if there's moisture in the grow room and all of that, so they just get moldy. Yeah, this is beautiful. And when you're going to check the yield, you can weigh even the substrates to see how much weight did they lose. So that's very interesting. Okay.